a full house. Hello, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube.
Hey guys, now is not the time to hang out with the wrong
Somebody's video just popped up. Okay, now let me do live on my TikTok. Guys, join in, share the live video, share the live feed, and settle down. We're about to, sorry. Okay. Today is a really crazy day. If you guys can see me and hear me fine, please drop something in the chat box. Just type in USA, USA. I'm just trying to go live on TikTok now so we can all get started at the same time. Okay. Let's see here. All right. Okay, I think we're all set now. Let's see. Okay, there you go. Good day, family, friends. Please settle down and let's get started. If you can hear me, you can see me, please type in USA or you can drop an emoji of the US flag. Just type it in below so that I can be sure that I'm talking to people and you guys can hear me very well. So we're going to have a discussion today concerning what the Trump policies have been so far. I mean, I know we didn't announce this too much. We were supposed to have come live tomorrow, but this is a little impromptu. So I still hope that many of you as possible are able to join us so we can have a good discussion tomorrow. We're not going to be able to come on live because we have some emergencies that came up for tomorrow. We've been trying to go live every Friday at 1 p.m. this year, but tomorrow we're not coming live. So please share the link, the live feed link to your friends on your stories, WhatsApps. You never know who needs U.S. immigration assistance. Now people are just suffering in fear. They cannot confide in anybody. So share the feed. Somebody could benefit, and that person could be somebody you really love who could not open up to you that they had immigration issues. All right. If you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, if you're on LinkedIn, and you can hear me and see me well, please drop a USA or the emoji of the US flag in the comment section, and then we can get started. So we've already done 100 days of a Trump presidency. So President Trump has been president for 100 days now, for a second time, and which is why we titled this video or this session 100 days down, 1,461 to go, tracking Trump's comeback and the road ahead. So far, we have done 100 days. Oh my goodness. The 100 days, I believe, fell on 29th April 30th, 100 days Trump presidency, and it's been really, it's been quite rough. It's been a very rough year for immigrants around the United States. It's been a lot for immigrants around the United States. So in this video, we're just going to look at some of the things that have come up, some of the policies, what's going on, 100 days, what has he achieved, what kind of dismantling, what kind of restructuring he has. Can you guys believe that I forgot to insert my microphone? Oh my goodness. It was in the middle of speaking. I'm like, no, hold on, wait a minute. Looks like I forgot something. The microphone for Facebook, LinkedIn. Okay, now that's on. I believe that's on. Okay, perfect. So let's go. There's been a lot of dismantling and restructuring. So we're going to look at some of the key discussions, some of the interesting areas. We don't have to look at everything. There's a way we can regroup what he's done so far, but we'll just pick the different areas of discussions, just the interesting areas and the things that have had some impact, and then we can chat about some of these things. Okay. Now, one of the top things that President Trump has done so far is securing the border security. There's a lot of border security now. There's militarization of the southern border. People they just reduced the numbers that are coming through the borders coming to seek asylum, because President Trump declared that there was an invasion. And so he had to ask the U.S. military to support border enforcement. So there's a lot of national security, and there's already reports that there has been a drastic reduction. The numbers that usually would come and seek asylum at the borders have reduced. They're saying that it's down about over 90% from a year ago. So down over 80% a year ago. Now they're just really just a few hundreds of people trying to or attempting to come through the border a month. So he's tightening the border. There's just aggressive enforcement and removal strategies even at the border. There's a lot of things happening there. They are not just allowing people to come in. I believe Trump also reinstated the MPP, Migrant Protection Protocol. If you are coming into the United States to seek asylum, then you typically have to wait outside the United States until your asylum case is being processed, and then you can come in. There was I believe a federal judge that blocked that in April 2025. So a lot of the actions that have been undertaken, a lot of them have undergone various levels of legal challenges. There have been federal, lawsuits. Some of the cases have gone up to the Supreme Court. So there's temporary restraining orders on some of the rules and the policies. There have been injunctions on some of the policies. Okay. So some of them are just undergoing a lot of changes. It's just incredibly hard to keep up with the various forms of litigations going around the country based on the different things that are being implemented and executed by the Trump administration. Obviously, the most concerning for most people is the interior enforcement. That concerns people who are inside the United States. Interior enforcement, they're already here. We had the alien registration requirement, which requires that people who have not registered their presence with the US government have to do so. There's a lot of collaboration between state and local law enforcement and ICE, because one of the executive orders, the president actually mandates that the federal task force be created so that other agencies could join in the efforts to carry out mass deportations. And if you guys didn't know this, President Trump has a big goal. His ambition is to carry out 1 million deportations per year during his presidency. Those are some really, really big numbers. 1 million deportations in a year, which is why the ICE officers have been given daily quotas that they have to meet, and they have to arrest people, detain people, and take them into detention. ICE detentions were already at full capacity as of March 2025, full capacity, and they are looking to create a lot of these temporary detention centers so that they can house the people they are detaining. Obviously, if you have all these big numbers, right? You are looking to deport 1 million people. If your goal is 1 million people you want to deport a year, there's going to be a lot of aggressive action, and there's going to be errors in the process. There's going to be mistakes. And you guys have heard about the case of Kilma Abrego Garcia. That's one of the most, one of the high profile cases that we've had in the United States. During this Trump presidency. Abrego Garcia's case is it's really interesting, and it has brought about a lot of argument. Okay, Kilma Abrego Garcia, let me tell you guys about the story. Today we're doing free flow, just easy going. So drop your questions, drop your comments, and then we can keep it interactive. So Kilma Abrego Garcia, he's from El Salvador, and this man entered the U.S. Unlawfully. He entered the U.S. unlawfully, and he applied for asylum. And when he applied for asylum, he was granted at the end of his application withholding of removal. And if you are granted withholding of removal, it means that the law or the courts are saying that do not deport this person to this particular country. So he was granted withholding of removal to El Salvador because he said that there were some gang members in El Salvador that he was afraid of. I believe the 18th Street gang members. So the court found out that yes, he was entitled to withholding of removal. I believe he was unable to meet the asylum threshold because he must have applied for asylum more than 1 year after he entered the US. I believe that's what the report says. And so that's why he was granted withholding of removal, which is a step down the asylum process. But withholding of removal, you are also afraid of being persecuted, because of some people, or because of, it's based on race, religion, belonging to a political social group, your nationality. You are afraid of being taken back to that country because you belong to a particular social group, or because based on one of these grounds, right? And Abrego Garcia was able to prove a withholding of removal case, so the court granted him. An immigration court in 2019 said, okay, this man should not be removed to El Salvador. Now, the thing with withholding of removal is that you are removable, meaning you should be deported, but don't deport him to El Salvador. But now the government is using that argument to claim that Abrego Garcia, there was no mistake in his deportation. Okay, so I don't know if you guys are following what I'm saying. Now, if you read some of the case law so far on withholding of removal, I believe there was a Supreme Court decision I read a couple of weeks ago about withholding of removal. And what it said was that withholding of removal, the first premise is that, yes, you should be deported. You don't have a right to not be deported. They found that you are removable, you should be deported. But number two, do not deport this person to this particular country based on one of the 5 grounds. Because of, belonging to a particular social group, race, nationality, religion, one of the 5 social 5 grounds, the person should not be removed to that particular country. And so the government is saying, well, he should be removed, just that we took him to El Salvador, and that Abrego Garcia, who was claiming that he was afraid of gang members called 18th Street gang members, those gang members no longer exist in El Salvador. So even though what they're assuming or alluding to is that even though we made a mistake Well, it's still fine because those gang members are no longer there, so he's not going to be killed even if he's in El Salvador. Okay, and President Trump was also interviewed recently by one of the reporters, and he was asked, is he going to comply with the Supreme Court order to facilitate Abrego Garcia's return to the United States? Because you know what happened. Abrego Garcia was, I believe, in Maryland. He lives in Maryland, father of 3 children, granted withholding of removal. This is a relief that allows you to get a work permit and renew it indefinitely until whenever. You know, you never get a green card. You're just here and you're allowed to work and stay in the US legally. You cannot apply for a green card, right? So Abrego Garcia had that and was doing just that. He was arrested and detained, bundled up, and then sent to El Salvador because he said he was part of the MS-13 gang. And his wife was sitting at home watching TV. You know, there was the or social media, there were these videos where the alleged gang members were being led down to Sikut. That's the notorious prison for terrorists. And they had held down their heads, they had shaved their heads, and, you know, they had all these tattoos. They were handcuffed or chained, and they had all these tattoos. So Abrego Garcia's wife, sitting at home, recognized her husband, and then obviously started the process of a habeas corpus petition. They filed an application to a district court, federal court, and they were seeking for Abrego Garcia's release from detention, like bring back this man. The district court asked the government, what's going on? You know, and they said, can you bring back this man? And then the government now appealed to the Court of Appeal and said, no, please don't let us bring back this man, because the district court gave a deadline by which the government had to bring back Abrego Garcia, because it looks like there was no due process. The man was not allowed to even show that he had legal status. And one of the things coming out recently is that there was a restraining order against Abrego Garcia filed by his wife. They said he was abusing his wife, beating her up, threatening her with violence, promising to kill her. And they are using that to discredit the man, right? Who the man is. But none of that matters. None of that matters to what the Supreme Court is saying. And I remember the Court of Appeal, in the decision concerning Kilmer Abrego Garcia, they said that if you are so sure that this man was supposed to be deported, then why are you worried about bringing him back and taking him through due process? If you are so convinced about your position, just bring him back. Let's go through the process. And then if he deserves to be sent back, we send him back. Now, there's something very interesting, right? Because even though the government is claiming, this man is a wife beater, he was threatening his wife, there were 2 restraining orders. They found 1 restraining order against him this morning. They're just digging up all his issues. Judge Borberg, in one of the cases, it was in the contempt ruling, I believe it was in the contempt ruling, he said something to the Trump administration just in April. Let me read that to you, very interesting. He said, well, let me start by saying that the judge just stated that even if the government believes that there's a mistake in a court ruling, the best way to resolve or to rectify that mistake is not to disobey a court order. Go through the right process, appeal the court ruling. So you don't just disobey a court order because in your mind you think the court is wrong. So Judge Borberg said, that court's later determination that the TRO suffered from a legal defect does not excuse the government's violation. Instead, it is a foundational legal precept that every judicial order must be obeyed, no matter how erroneous it may be, until a court reverses it. If a party chooses to disobey the order rather than wait for it to be reversed through the judicial process, such disobedience is punishable as contempt, notwithstanding any later revealed deficiencies in the order. That foundational rule of law answers not just how this compliance inquiry can proceed, but why it must. The rule reflects a belief that in the fair administration of justice, no man can be judged in his own case, no matter how exalted his station or righteous his motives. The Constitution does not tolerate willful disobedience of judicial orders, especially by officials of a coordinate branch, the government, who have sworn an oath to uphold it. To permit such officials to freely annul the judgment of the Court of the United States would not just destroy the rights acquired under those judgments, it would make a solemn mockery of the Constitution itself. So this is a portion of the judgment from the ruling, in the contempt ruling against the US government, the Trump administration, when they disobeyed the judge's order not to take people to El Salvador without due process under the, I believe, the Aliens Enemies Act deportation, So it's very instructive, right? So the Supreme Court has given orders, facilitate this man's return, facilitate Abrego Garcia's return to the United States so that he can go through due process. I believe yesterday or this week, President Trump was interviewed and he was asked, are you going to comply with the court orders? And he says, I could, he could bring Kilma Abrego Garcia back, but at the end of what he said, he's saying that he's not going to bring him back and that he's not, this Kilma Abrego Garcia is not Maryland darling, as the media has portrayed him to be. He's a bad man. He's a member of the MS-13. There's just, all of that going on. So that's a very interesting case that we're all watching to see how the Trump administration will react to it. But it looks like that position is clear. I don't think they intend to bring Abrego Garcia back. A federal court, a district court has ruled and said, bring this man back. They gave a deadline. They disobeyed. A court of appeals, there's a court of appeals judge who has also said, I'm not staying this execution. Go and bring this man back. The Supreme Court judgment was clear. That's what the court of appeals said. The Supreme Court judgment was clear. Facilitate Abrego Garcia's return. And I've had questions from people saying that, why is it that the court just doesn't say it straightly? Bring him back. Bring him back, right? But the judicial process is a very interesting process. And there are three branches of the US, there's three branches. We have the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature, right? So no branch can overstep another. There's separation of powers. The separation of powers. And the executive is the one in charge of foreign policy. And so if the Supreme Court oversteps its boundaries, because the Supreme Court cannot regulate foreign policy. And so if the Supreme Court were to say, go and bring Abrego Garcia back, then the Trump administration will jump on that and say, oh, the judges or the Supreme Court were ultra vires, meaning they went overboard. They did not have the legal right to determine how the government should regulate foreign policy. And therefore, that ruling could likely be struck down. And so that's why the Supreme Court was very careful and said, facilitate the return, right? They're not giving you the instructions, but it's the whole thing is very complex because it is an intersection of constitutional law, foreign policy. And so the courts are very careful that they don't want to overstep and start meddling and what one of the judges called micromanaging the executive branch. So they've just told him, go and bring this man back. And oh my God, the Court of Appeal ruling about the interpretation of Abrego Garcia's thing was very interesting. He was so clear. We'll do that on another episode so that we don't go too much into detail, because the Abrego Garcia case is an extremely, very, very interesting case that must be studied. Okay, and okay, yeah, I found it. So Judge Zinis, she's the one that authorized discovery to determine that the government has taken any action to facilitate Abrego Garcia's return to the United States. And once the Supreme Court gave the order that facilitate the man's return, there was, I believe, Stephen Miller and a bunch of other people who were now interpreting the Supreme Court ruling and said, oh, the Trump administration won. The court sided with us. It was a fantastic ruling, completely misinterpreted everything. I was watching, the various, they're like, oh yeah, we won, the Supreme Court sides with us. And I went back and I read the ruling, and I'm like, I'm not sure what the Trump is reading or saw in that judgment. Now, the case went back to the Court of Appeal because the Supreme Court said it should go back to the Court of Appeal so that it can proceed. And the judge told the Trump administration that no matter how they wanted to sugarcoat the ruling, it was a very clear ruling. The Supreme Court's instructions were clear. They should not pretend not to understand what the Supreme Court said. So this is what Judge Zinis said. Is there he or she? Well, he said that the Supreme Court's decision does not allow the government to do essentially nothing. It requires the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador and to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. The government argued that its obligation was merely to remove domestic barriers. The Fourth Circuit rejected that position outright. It said, facilitate is an active verb. It requires that steps be taken, as the Supreme Court has made perfectly clear. The plain and active meaning of the word cannot be diluted by its constriction as the government would have it to a narrow term of art. Facilitation does not permit the admittedly erroneous deportation of an individual to the one country's prisons that the withholding order forbids. It would reduce the rule of law to lawlessness and tarnish the very values for which Americans of diverse views and persuasions have always stood. I mean, this judgment by this Court of Appeal Judge Zinis in the Abrego Garcia case is highly clear. I mean, it's subject to no ambiguity. But unfortunately, it looks like this man, they're not going to bring him back. And so, we continue to wait to see how that will play out. It's really interesting times, right? This is one of obviously the high profile cases. And so I wanted us to go into that some more. Now, a look back again at some of the policies of Trump. They've stopped the U.S. RAP program, the refugee program. They've placed a hold on it. I believe once they did that, there were about 10,000 people, according to statistics, who were coming in under the refugee program. All those flights were canceled. 22,000 people waiting to be brought in under the refugee program canceled as well. And then there's been a lot of reduction in the legal pathways, right? Former President Joe Biden had started some parole programs for some countries, Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela. The Trump administration gave 30 days to revoke all the paroles under the process and told them, the beneficiaries of the parole program, if you are from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Biden let you come in, if you have not found another way to adjust or regularize your status, at the end of 30 days, we are going to come find you and we're going to deport you forcefully. That, I believe a federal court issued some type of temporary order blocking it. A lot of the TPS designations, some of them have been redesignated, meaning if your country has TPS, temporary protected status, and it makes it unsafe for you to go back to your country because there's maybe war or there's some type of natural disaster. And the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, they've designated your country and said, oh, because of the unrest happening in your country, you can remain in the United States for 18 months or 12 months. You can get a work permit and you can stay here in safety. Now, DHS Secretary Christine Noem, she's redesignated some of these TPS. She's shortened some of them. Haiti, for example, the redesignation, she's shortened the extension. It's no longer 18 months, 12 months. Several of these countries, they are not going to designate them for TPS protection anymore. Okay, so there's been a lot of narrowing of benefits, immigration benefits for groups of people. One of the sad cases, South Sudan, US visa ban. It's a very, very small country, doesn't affect many people, but it looks like it's the only country that has so far received a visa ban. Only country that has received a complete US visa ban, because the government, the US government, said that there was a man, I believe it's Makula Kintu. He was from South Sudan. He was granted a travel document to be deported to South Sudan. He arrived in South Sudan. The man said, I am not Makula Kintu, I'm somebody else. And he had been issued a travel document, very confusing. They returned the man to the United States, and the US went bonkers. They were really mad. And the Rubio, is it Marco Rubio, who's the Department of State Secretary? He said South Sudan was facing a ban. Nobody from South Sudan can travel to the United States. South Sudan, if you're from South Sudan, you are not going to get a visa to the US. If you have a visa, it's revoked, putting hundreds of thousands of people in jeopardy, right? Because, we don't know the numbers that had already perhaps applied for visas or had intentions to come here. Well, they've made it repeatedly clear. A visa is a privilege. It's not a right, okay? And it's just like you have your house. Allowing somebody permission to enter your house is a privilege. Nobody has permission to just enter your home. So this is what's happening. South Sudan visa ban. The visa ban that the New York Times touted, that there were 43 countries on a visa ban list, draft list, it has still not materialized. This has still not materialized. Now, going back to South Sudan, which is the only country currently facing a full visa ban or a visa ban, South Sudan now decided to accept the deportee in the spirit of friendly relations. So they said, look, we'll accept this man. He's Congolese, but we'll still accept him. The US said that once South Sudan began to fully cooperate, then they would reevaluate the travel ban or whatever restrictions that were imposed on South Sudan. So we're hopeful that they're currently reviewing the cooperation level of South Sudan so that they can roll back the travel restrictions that were imposed on that very small, poor country, mighty country, perhaps. But it looks like nobody remembers them, or there's not much advocacy going on for them. I hope that they can, that issue can be resolved, because the people who are here in the United States from South Sudan, they are extremely worried and very concerned. Also, their TPS designation ends May 3rd, I believe. Oh my gosh, is it not in 2 days? May 3rd is already in 2 days. I was going to say next month. May 3rd. So they have to find ways to regularize their status if they have not already done so. Now, another thing also that the president and his administration they've done is they are promoting self-deportation and voluntary departure. Guys, let me tell you, when people ask me, what is the Trump administration trying to achieve with all this fear, all this anxiety, military tactics? You wake up in the morning, there's something new, you are going to bed, there's a US citizen caught, detained, US citizens are being deported. Yes, it's happening. We've posted across our social medias. People are afraid. I'm telling you, the goal of all this is to make people so afraid that they will leave the United States by themselves. Because President Trump stated on his own social media page on the Truth app, I believe he owns that Truth app, and he said that it was not possible to take millions of people through due process, through immigration court. It was just not possible. The man has 4 years. He's on a time bomb. He's on a bomb, like a ticking time. He has very limited time. And he needs to achieve 1 million people deported every year. How is he going to do that? There are currently about 4 million cases pending in immigration court. And the government themselves gave us these statistics. This is unprecedented, historic. There's never been this backlog in immigration courts, 4 million cases. There's just about 71 immigration courts in the United States. And some of these immigration judges are getting fired. A lot of the staff have been laid off. There have been furloughs. There's not that many, people, the people that are supposed to be working for the federal government to push the cases, they're also being laid off. Some are being fired, and the cases are backed up. Well, he's going to resort to alternative means to have people deport. And so, which is why expedited removal was expanded on the first day. The first week of office of Trump. Previously, expedited removal could only happen 100 miles around the land border, and if you are coming less than 2 weeks to the United States. Now, it's been expanded nationwide since January. And if you've been here in the US for less than 2 years, you entered in unlawfully, then you are subject to expedited removal. You will not be allowed to see an immigration judge. You can be deported. So they are promoting voluntary departure, self-deportation. Guys, can you believe that you will go to immigration court, you will go to USCIS field offices, and there's a poster there on USCIS website, and it tells you that all illegal aliens leave. And I saw someone ask this very interesting question. Think about going to a criminal court and it says that criminals just plead guilty so that you can go into prison. Well, you are there so that you can receive due process. You are there so that there can be a prosecutor, and then there's going to be a neutral arbiter who's a judge who will hear, the prosecution's case, and then they'll hear your defense. And then you will have your day in court to explain why you are not guilty. But if you are being told, well, illegal alien, just leave, then it's as if, well, don't even bother to come to court. Don't go through the due process, just leave. But what people also fail to realize is that the law itself provides that people who enter the US unlawfully can even end up becoming US citizens. You can file something called an I-601A waiver to forgive your unlawful presence, even if you enter the US unlawfully. Even if you enter the US unlawfully, you can still apply for a green card. For example, your family member is your spouse is in the military. The fact that your spouse is in the military can cure your defective entry into the US, your unlawful entry. It will be forgiven. If you are the victim of abuse, VAWA, unlawful entry could be forgiven. So the law itself provides pathways for these illegals or people who enter what they call illegals, but for people who enter the US unlawfully to be able to adjust. And I remember one decision I read years ago, one legal decision. It said that if you disagree with the laws, go back to Congress so that Congress will rewrite the laws. As for the courts, they are there to interpret the laws. Lawyers were there to interpret, help enforce, execute the laws. So if the government is saying that, well, we don't want these people who enter unlawfully in the United States, then go back to Congress. The right means is to go back to Congress and have them rewrite the law so that there's no pathway for unlawful immigrants or people who enter, the immigrants who enter the US unlawfully to be able to get the green cards and citizenship. But the very laws upon which immigration is based in the United States allow some of these people to regularize and obtain the highest status. They become naturalized US citizens and can do everything that a US born person can do apart from stand for US presidency. Okay, so if that's the case, then you want to go back to Congress and have the laws rewritten. Okay, so there's that again, that CBP One app, which has become, I believe, CBP Home app. DHS relaunched it. CBP One app was previously instituted by the Biden administration, and the goal was to allow people to come into the United States in a regular manner. They'll book appointments for asylum, and then they could come in an orderly manner. Trump came, they dismantled that CBP One app and relabeled it CBP Home app, and it was pretty much a self-deportation app. If you want to deport, you tell them, I want to deport, you put it there, and then you can leave. But again, let me make this distinction. Self-deportation means that you have a final order of removal, or you've been ordered removed and you are leaving the US. If you are unlawfully present in the US and you leave, it's not a self-deportation because an immigration court has not ordered you, deported from the United States. If you leave when you're just unlawfully present, you could trigger some bars. So these things, you have to make sure you discuss them with an immigration attorney if you are intending to leave the United States. We obviously couldn't go through many of the things. Well, let me talk about this final thing, and then we're going to take questions. Keep dropping your questions. I'm seeing them. I'll read a few of them and we can answer them. Well, before we go on, let me say we have a WhatsApp channel, US Immigration Law by AK Poku on WhatsApp. Follow us on WhatsApp, follow our WhatsApp channel, and we are going to, we share a lot of live updates. Join on WhatsApp, okay? Now, guys, the other thing is that the Trump administration is collaborating with a lot of federal agencies to speed up mass deportations. So you want to be aware of that. Now, IRS is sharing tax data with DHS. The IRS has given access to DHS to help speed up deportation. So they have access to personal information, where people work, where people live, because undocumented people have been paying taxes through ITIN, the individual tax identification number. They've been doing that for a while. And they had been given the promise that, their data was going to be protected from unlawful exposure. So there was data privacy. However, the Trump administration has used a loophole, and that loophole is pretty much saying if it's for criminal purposes or there's some other, the government is the person whose tax records, the person is the subject of some proceedings, then that data can be released so that ICE can use it. And so apart from the IRS sharing tax data with ICE to speed up deportations, housing, I believe there's a housing department also sharing tax data with ICE, the USPS, United States Postal Services. Their investigative unit that takes care of federal postal fraud and things like that. They have also joined in. The Washington Post announced this just yesterday. They are also USPS. They are also now assisting ICE to speed up mass deportations because they are going to be giving access to ICE, your mail, letters, what your mail looks like. Now, under Executive Order 14159, it's entitled Protecting the American People Against Invasion. If you look at Section 6, President Trump directed the creation of federal Homeland Security task forces. And what he was saying was that he was mandating participation from all federal law enforcement agencies, which is why now USPS is part of immigration deportation efforts. The IRS is part of deportation efforts. Social Security is part of deportation efforts. Social Security has also given data that is supposed to be protected by privacy laws. They're sharing this data with DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, that I believe Elon Musk is involved with. DOGE has also been granted access to ECAS. ECAS is the electronic court system which manages personal information of people who are in immigration court, all your filings, your records, it's on ECAS. And so if anything is filed in immigration court, you can log on to ECAS and see your case. What did the judge rule, decision, what has been filed? Department of Government Efficiency, Elon Musk's DOGE has access to millions of immigrants who have gone through the immigration court process or who are currently going through the immigration court process. They have access to those data. So it's a lot of things happening so far. We've done 100 days. We have 1,461 more days to go. I tell you guys, last year we did a live video and I did it with attorney Biliana, who works with AK Poku Law. She's worked with ICE, and we talked about the fact that I told you guys that Trump was coming back with a bang. This is like a massive comeback for him, and he's not going to leave any stone unturned. His administration keeps saying that they are going to use every tool in their toolbox. They are digging up ancient laws and rules, alien registration law. You know about that already. They are amassing all their arsenals to go after, undocumented immigrants. And it's going to be a selling point for him. I guess it's going to be one of the things that he will be very proud of, to show that he was able to achieve a great presidency. I believe for him, that's some type of personal or political ambition, and he has to achieve those numbers by hook or by crook. So guys, drop your questions. I think we have just 10 minutes more to end this live session. If you haven't liked this page, you haven't followed, you haven't shared, please go ahead and share. If you've enjoyed the session, we are not yet done. Drop in USA in the chat box, in the comment section, and let me be sure that I'm talking to people who are listening. Drop USA, drop the USA flag, and then let me see that you guys can hear me. You can see me. Type in USA. I'm going to try to read a couple questions, maybe more than a couple that we have here. Let's see here. There's one question that we received. Somebody was asking, if you came into the US on a B2 visa, should you apply for the alien registration? Should you register under the alien registration requirement? If you came into the US on a B2 visa, then you are not required to register under the new alien registration requirement. This is because you applied for and you obtained a visa, and so you are already registered. during the visa process, you were likely fingerprinted, you did biometrics, and so you are already registered. Even if you have overstayed your B2 visa, you're still not required to register under the Alien Registration Act because you are already registered. The government is already aware of your presence in the United States. Similarly, if you came in on an F1 visa, you came in on an F2 visa, you came in on an F1 visa to pursue a full course of study, even if you have overstayed your visa, you are no longer in a period of authorized stay, you are also not required to register because you are already registered. You got registered through the consular processing once you are applying for your visa in your home country. You were fingerprinted, so you are already registered. It doesn't matter that you've overstayed your I-94. You are already registered. You are not required to re-register. Okay, let's see if I have another. I've seen a bunch of them. Let me see if I can find. Let me put this here. Let's see if we can get something on Facebook. I don't believe so. Okay, let's see for Instagram again. Oh my gosh, what did I do here? Guys, hold on. Okay, there you go. I went off momentarily. Why is my camera? Hold on, guys. It looks like for Facebook. What's going on here? Okay, I'm sorry, guys. I don't know why this happened. Can you guys see me and hear me? Please let me know. Yeah, okay, that's a good point. Let me read this by Mike on YouTube. Mike S says, if you came here as a visitor and overstay, then fix it and become legally here. Absolutely. If you come into the US as a visitor on a B2 visa and you've overstayed, there are ways to fix your status or regularize your status. Give us a call and we'll be happy to assist you. Princess on TikTok says, how long do you have to wait to file for your spouse after getting married? How long do you have to file for your spouse after getting married? Okay, so it depends. It depends. I see Princess is saying, do you have to wait up to 90 days? So there is a presumption of fraud. There was a Department of State, presumption of fraud that said that if people enter the United States on one visa category and then they did something that was inconsistent with the terms of that visa, then there could be a presumption of fraud. Okay, so for example, if you came in on a B2 visa and then as soon as you landed, within 2 days, you get married and then you apply for a green card, the government is going to be like, wait a minute. So you were coming on a B2 visa so that you get married and apply for a green card. And they're saying that kind of act is inconsistent with the purpose of a B2 visa. Because a B2 visa, you're coming in temporarily for pleasure. And they don't expect that you come in for pleasure and then suddenly you apply for your green card. Well, if you were really coming in for pleasure and things happened, like after your first night of honeymoon, and you can actually come in on a B2 visa to get married, and then you can leave. You'll see it in the foreign Foreign Affairs Manual, which is the authoritative source of consular affairs that regulates consular adjudications for visas at embassies. It regulates consular officers. It tells them how to give visas, when to deny, what to do. The Foreign Affairs Manual says that you can come in on a B2 visa, get married, get engaged, and then you can leave. That's fine, But the Department of State says that there's that 90-day presumption of fraud if you do something that's inconsistent with your entry purpose. Now, the USCIS, remember that Department of State is a federal agency that regulates immigration, but Department of State is more to do with U.S. embassies around the world, U.S. passports. They have their jurisdiction. USCIS is also United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. They are more affirmative applications inside the United States. They also have their jurisdiction. If you're trying to get a visa to come into the United States, you're dealing with Department of State. Visa lottery, Department of State. USCIS has to do with work permits, green card application from inside the United States. Department of State has to do with immigrant visas, the form I-551 when you're coming in. USCIS has to do with, citizenship granting inside the United, like naturalization, for instance, right? So USCIS said that presumption of fraud, 90-day presumption of fraud, is they released a memo. This was, I believe, in 2021, and that presumption of fraud is a Department of State process. USCIS, there's no presumption of fraud if you come in 90 days and you do something inconsistent with the terms of your visa. But USCIS will be focusing on the totality of the circumstances. They'll look at everything surrounding your case and then determine. So USCIS does not necessarily strictly adhere to that 90-day presumption of fraud, right? That presumption of fraud can obviously be rebutted. If they claim that you came in on a B2 visa, you got married in 2 days, and then you applied for a green card, and you can show that, look, my plan was I was going to just come in to visit my boyfriend, and when my boyfriend saw me at the airport, he's like, I'm not letting you go back, and everything happened, and things escalated, and he put the ring on it and said, no, this is not. And if you can prove that, then you can rebut that presumption, even if USCIS ever raises it. But USCIS says it's not something they are necessarily holding on to. They'll look at the totality of the circumstances. So do you have to wait up to 90 days? It depends. It depends. Contact us. Let's see, how did you come in? What's the situation like? And we can give you proper legal advice. You guys know where to find us. AK Poku Law. Find us, Google us. You find our phone number. You can call us, you can DM us on social media, you can WhatsApp us, and we'll be very happy to set up a time, your one-on-one time with me, and then I can review your case and give you legal advice as needed. Let me see if I have anything on Instagram. There's a lot, but it just keeps coming in. Let's see. I see a lot of things on Instagram. I'm trying to scroll through to see if I can pick. William Addison said, is there any restrictions for Ghana now? No, there's no travel restrictions. If you're in the US without, okay, this is William Addison. If you're in the US without document, should you voluntarily give yourself up for deportation? This is a very broad question. I mean, this is something you will certainly want to contact your attorney and discuss what's going on, how you came in. Do you have any available reliefs? And then, we can take it from there. Oh my gosh. Ifwa Eb says, F1 students in good standing travel back home to renew their visa. Please, you certainly have to call us for this one. You already know there's a lot happening with these CVIS revocations, visa revocations, CBP denials, for students trying to come in, depending on the circumstances. I mean, non-essential travel, I would not recommend it at this time at all. You guys also saw what we shared, right? In Maryland, Baltimore, there was a big marriage fraud scheme. I believe, was it on Monday or Tuesday? They had been investigating them since 2022, and they've arrested 4 of the ringleaders. They made over $4 million. People were paying between $20,000 and $40,000 for, the marriage, the transactional marriages, so that the people would file green cards for them. And they arrested 10 people who were involved in this process at the USCIS field office, Baltimore. This week, more than 100 cases have been denied. Those cases were linked to the scheme. And once your case is denied under such a marriage fraud scheme, you get something called the Section 204C bar. Section 204C bar. In essential, you want to post the name of the channel instead of the link. on so that people can know what to follow. U.S. Immigration Law by A.K. Poku. Okay, that's a channel on WhatsApp. So follow that channel, guys. Keep dropping USA. Let me know that you are watching, you are listening, you can hear me. So if you do get such, a case, or you are connected to such a case, you could get a 204C bar. And this bar will prevent you from ever getting a green card in the United States unless you are able to get that bar overturned. We've successfully done that for people. Sometimes USCIS will give all these allegations of marriage fraud, and you have to fight back, because if you don't, you are screwed. If you don't fight back marriage fraud allegations, then it becomes, you can't get any other benefits. It becomes very, 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 very difficult. And there's generally no waiver for such a thing. All right, guys. So I think I've answered a few questions. 100 days of Trump presidency. How has it been for you so far? What are your thoughts? Has it been tough, crazy? Just, how has it been? What do you think? We have 1,461 more days. There's a lot going to be happening. If anybody tells you they know exactly what's going to be happening, they're lying, because obviously even the Trump administration themselves, they, looks like they're still, there's a lot they have to unpack, because I don't think they anticipated some of the things happening. There's a lot that is happening that hasn't been planned, right? So we're looking forward to more days. There's going to be a lot more happening. The immigration landscape, as you are aware, is fast evolving. Every day there's something new. So it's a crucial time to stay updated, follow our pages, we do our best to share updates, news, laws. We try to give explanations, read our captions, and engage with us. Once you see something, you understand it, drop a comment, drop a like, so that we can be encouraged to do more and see that, okay, you guys are enjoying what we are sharing with you guys so far. Thank you all for joining in. Don't forget to like our page, share our page, and if you've enjoyed the session, type USA as your log off note, and I will see you guys. So tomorrow we're not coming live. Counting. Thank you for joining. She says, thanks so much for the daily updates. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate you and many of our social media followers. Tomorrow we're not coming live, but we're going to be coming live as much as possible every Friday, 1 p.m. So EST. Oh, one thing I forgot to tell you guys. Those who applied for the diversity visa lottery, Saturday, the results are going to be released. So far, there's not been any executive action or order or anything that will block the diversity visa lottery program. So it's still business as usual. We'll talk some more about the visa lottery program once the results are released. There's a lot more I have to say, but we don't have too much time today. So let's keep it for next time. Thank you so much. Take care, guys. Bye.